After sabotaging Outer Heaven's secret doomsday weapon Metal Gear TX-55 and unintentionally initiating the Fortress's self-destruct system, the battle-worn and bloodied Foxhound rookie, Solid Snake, rushed to escape his ever-approaching destruction. Though, one more unexpected roadblock appeared before his path. A former mentor, father, and commanding officer of Operation Intrude N313, this being Big Boss. Or at least, this is what the history books report, though the truth of the situation was actually much more tragic, as the man who stood before Snake here was truly his father's legacy given physical form. A phantom proselytized to parading pressurized propaganda and playing his painful part. Punished Venom Snake. Punished Venom Snake, or V for short, is the protagonist of Metal Gear Solid V, and the loyal body double for the legendary soldier, Big Boss. As he began commanding the private military company Diamond Dogs back in 1984, he would eventually go on to lead the reforged Outer Heaven movement up until 1995, due of course to Operation Intrude N313. Though, in the 11-year time gap, Venom used his skills as a soldier and his pull as a PMC leader to spread the legacy of Big Boss across the world and essentially became the legend in living form. Which makes it hard to say which Big Boss is actually present in any of the mass conflicts that Big Boss was reported to be at, as well, which of the two certain characters met in their former careers. Though, one thing we do know for sure is that the way Venom was used by the original Big Boss shows us, between the two, which is the real demon. Though, before we get too deep into that, let's understand the meaning behind his name and design. Now, name-wise, Venom Snake has had quite a few code names that all hold a specific meaning in their own right. Firstly, let's discuss the one that he is credited as throughout most of the game. Punished Venom Snake. Now, the punished portion is pretty obvious, in reference to his broken appearance following the destruction of MSF, as well as the themes of falling to damnation and being punished, in a sense. A tagline for Phantom Pain was, "I'm already a demon."
I'm already a demon.
Though, interestingly enough, the term Punished Snake isn't actually spoken or used anywhere in the game, while the name Venom Snake is said by Ocelot in reference to how he is a changed man, no longer a naked snake, but one full of venom.
But you survived. You went straight down to hell, and they pulled you out, your eye wide open. Full of venom. The days of naked Snake are long gone. Welcome back, Venom Snake.
Hence why the Venom is in quotes between the Punished and Snake portion of his name, showing that he is full of venom, literally. And of course, this name also plays on the themes of revenge in the game, as well as highlighting how much of a weapon Venom has been molded into, which also plays with the motif of his overall design, as while Venom Snake adopts Solid and Naked's own Kyle Reese-like design, with a little bit of Kiefer Sutherland sprinkled in there, he is also given an additional demon-like silhouette, as his most defining physical trait is a large piece of shrapnel embedded in his head. This design element isn't just for show either. It has gameplay mechanics tied to it as well, that allow the shrapnel to change over the course of the game depending on the player's action, acting as a semi-invisible morality system in a way. Though, next to his horn, the mechanical left arm of Venom is a major piece of his character design as well. Or, should I say, bionic left arm, as the prosthetic replacing Venom's arm is a specialized myoelectric prosthesis, or a prosthesis that responds to the electrical signals generated by the muscles of the replaced limb. This bionic arm was acquired by Ocelot specifically for Venom once he woke up, and the default version of the arm actually resembles a very similar prosthesis used by the antagonist of Peace Walker and Ultimate Hide-and-Seek champion, Vladimir Zadornov, being even colored the same vibrant red, and even eventually being equipped with the hilarious, but sadly ineffective, Rocket to Peace. The concept of the bionic arm, as well as Venom's status as an amputee, was a design decision made early on in the development of Metal Gear Solid V. with Kojima wanting to tie Venom together with the Moby Dick aesthetic he had going for the game, especially back when it was originally Phantom Pain by Moby Dick Studios. But he also wanted it to be a tool for the player, allowing them to slowly build upon this weakness and turn it into a strength. Which, this idea of Venom being a man rebuilt and made better than he was before, is seemingly inspired by the classic, if a bit campy, television series, The $6 Million Man, an aspect slightly reinforced by Kojima actually paying to license out the official $6 Million Man bionic sound effect that plays whenever you punch someone with the bionic arm. The bionic arm can also be upgraded throughout the game and given special abilities that really do give the player that invests into them a wonderful tool to complete missions with. As well, these abilities themselves reference previous things we've seen throughout the series and other Kojima-related products, with the most obvious of them being the Hand of Jehuti, which is weirdly not the only Zoe reference in this game, though there seems to be a couple of cut arm designs as well, such as the medical arm, the firearm, the parasite arm, and of course the Archaea arm, which I assume would have given Venom an interesting set of abilities to play around with, but in some cases I can imagine how these skills just got recycled into the skull suit and parasite item that we have in the final game. Though speaking of Venom's many arm options, this game offers a great variety of customization throughout it, with equipment being constantly upgraded or modified, and at certain points being able to modify guns as well. We also have a great assortment of outfits, gadgets, but most importantly, his unit tag, as at any point in the game, the player can change the icon for Diamond Dogs, which will appear in cutscenes and be placed on the flag at Mother Base. And the options given to the players for establishing this emblem are full of references to past and future events in the series, as well as a nice variety of general icons and symbols. A lot of Venom's character was designed in-game with the idea of giving the player the ultimate freedom to shape him to how they like. And this is because Venom is entirely intended to be the player's insert and impact on the grander story of Metal Gear, which is a factor of his character that has been around since the early trailers of the game, like with the 2013 GDC trailer, where Miller directly addresses the player when speaking to the doctor about the injured. Along with this, Metal Gear Solid V's opening has you waking up from a coma directly from the perspective of Venom, reinforcing the direct connection between the player and the character. There's even a neat little detail about this opening segment in how the game checks for your inverted controls, as when the doctor asks Venom to look up, pressing either up or down will cause Venom to look up, setting your control schemes for you in an organic way. Now, Kojima had more intentions when it came to making Venom than just giving players control over a period of time between Metal Gear Solid V and Metal Gear 1. He also wanted to give them Big Boss's legacy, as the players of the game are the reason Big Boss and Metal Gear as a whole is as huge and successful as it is now. And the game itself suggests this. Listen closely to the words used by the original Big Boss during the Man Who Sold the World cassette tape.
Now do you remember who you are? What you were meant to do? I cheated death thanks to you. And thanks to you, I've left my mark. You have too. You've written your own history. You're your own man. I'm Big Boss. And you are too. No. He's the two of us together. Where we are today, we built it. This story, this legend, it's ours. We can change the world and with it the future. I am you, and you are me. Carry that with you wherever you go. Thank you, my friend. From here on out, you're Big Boss.
He cheated death thanks to us. This works both narratively in the sense that the medic is the person who blocked Big Boss from the initial explosion that scarred Venom, but he also helped him escape the hospital and the vengeful eye of Skullface, Man on Fire, and many others. It also is a term that works meta-wise, as Big Boss being replaced by this body double in Metal Gear 1 means that he literally escaped his death at the end of that game. The player, through Venom, fixed one of the series' biggest plot holes. He also thanks Venom for helping him leave his mark on history, again harkening to how both of them spread Big Boss's legacy across the world in universe, but also in how the player, especially longtime fans, personally helped share stories about Big Boss and Metal Gear as a whole. We've even written our own history, Diamond Dogs, a faction which is both Venom's, but as I mentioned earlier, the players as well. It is a fully customizable PMC built from the ground up by us that will later become the famous Outer Heaven. We are Big Boss as much as John is. And as if in an inverse of the ending of Metal Gear Solid 2, where Raiden rejects the player's control over his life, to reinforce that the player has control over Boss and his legacy, Big Boss takes on the identity picked out for him by the player. Literally. As to go into hiding, he adopts the name and face of the soldier that we designed when we started playing the game. The player and Big Boss literally swap identities, which I feel is a really strong story told in a way only a video game can. This is why Venom's name is also sometimes shortened to V, as not only to play with the other tagline of V has come to, with the player fully awakening or coming to their role in the world, but also this game is entirely Venom's in nature, hence why it is called Metal Gear Solid V and not 5. Now, it should be mentioned that Venom is still a character within the world of Metal Gear. A pretty great one nonetheless, as long before he became the Phantom of Big Boss, he was a soldier working under him in the Army Without Borders, MSF. His talents were considered to be second only to the Boss's, and even Boss himself considered him to be one of the best men they had. Eventually, due to his talents and loyalty, he was chosen to assist Big Boss in a mission to infiltrate Camp Omega and rescue both Chico and Paz from captivity. His role in the operation was that of combat medic and stationed aboard the helicopter intended to support Boss during his infiltration. And after Boss successfully rescued the two, he was assigned to check both prisoners. While Chico seemed clear, Paz had a distinct stomach wound, one which Boss correctly assumed to be hiding a bomb. And after an emergency surgery, Venom's medical expertise allowed them to remove it without causing any major internal damage to Paz, disposing of Skullface's little gift into the ocean below. But something felt off. Wanting to be safe, Boss ordered Venom to check Paz over one more time, and the two discovered a smaller bomb placed in a rather uncomfortable location. Moving quickly, they removed it as well, saving Paz's life. But soon, the helicopter would arrive on base to find it under attack. And after the destruction of MSF and the recovering chaos, Paz sprung to life, and likely due to Miller's own manic screaming elevating her level of panic and delirium, Boss's words about the bombs never reached her. She opened the helicopter's door and jumped to the ocean below, unintentionally allowing an XOF soldier to fire an RPG at the chopper and landing a near-direct impact with those inside, which means that while Paz fell to her perceived doom, those still on board the chopper all found themselves critically injured. Boss and Venom entered a coma, while Miller was partially incapacitated but recovered quickly, and Chico, along with the pilot for that mission, both perished. Following this, over the next 9 years, Boss and Venom would rest in a hospital which had its location hidden from the world, and around 1984, the two of them would begin to recover from the incident. Boss waking up a few months before Venom and making plans with Ocelot on what they would do going forward. Deciding that Boss would stay in the hospital and watch over the unconscious Venom for now, he decided to rebuild on his own physique, preparing for the day that XOF discovered their location and attacked. And soon enough, Venom would begin to wake from his coma as well. He learned of his condition, but due to the injuries, facial reconstruction surgery, and some hypnotherapy, Venom also fully believed that he was Big Boss. And soon after he woke up, but before he had recovered, assassins had infiltrated the building, a silent one breaking into the room that Venom was recovering in and stealthily eliminating the nurse and doctor one by one before eventually aiming her weapon down at him. Luckily, he was then rescued by his roommate, a bandaged man calling himself Ishmael, who referred to Venom specifically as Ahab. Ishmael realized the danger of the situation and wanted to get the two moving, injecting Venom with a drug intended to get his heart pumping, and the two of them attempted their escape, though soon enough they were brought to a halt by a XOF hit squad, as well as the Flaming Spirit of Vengeance Man on Fire. Though thanks to Ishmael's quick thinking and Venom's slowly returning skills, the two are able to escape mostly unharmed. Eventually, Ocelot would recover Venom, and the two would begin down the path of bringing the legend back to life.
Now go! Let the legend come back to life.
Though, what Venom didn't see here is Ishmael's true identity, as the man under the bandages was Big Boss all along. Though there are a couple subtle hints to this that are layered throughout the opening that would help you realize it way earlier than expected. First, of course, the most obvious. Ishmael and Venom have the same voice actor.
What happened to the woman?
The woman? We gave her a light. She took the short way down.
Which is actually true as far back as Ground Zeroes, though the medic there had his voice pitch shifted down.
You gotta get it out. No time for anesthetic. We have to open her now.
Then, of course, you have, when saving Venom, Ishmael makes mention of talking to himself,
You're talking to yourself.
as Venom has already undergone facial reconstruction surgery to look like Big Boss. As well, since Boss and Venom shared the same room, if you look at Venom's bed next to Ishmael's bed, you'll see that Ishmael's bed is much more flush with ceremonial flowers, the Stars of Bethlehem, where we, as Venom, had a single bedside vase whose flower wasn't even left for him. It was taken from Big Boss's side of the room, adopting a flower the same way we adopt his identity. Though I'd be lying if I said Phantom Pain didn't make an attempt to try to convince you that Ishmael may not even be real throughout this entire opening. Firstly, the line about talking to yourself could be very easily interpreted as a bit of self-awareness, as we aren't aware right away what the big reveal of the game is. Then, oftentimes throughout the opening, Ishmael will vanish and reappear throughout the level, even having a fake-out death at one point. And then he completely vanishes after the ambulance crash during the escape. And future information delivered later in the game try to lay seeds of doubt in your own mind, as from the briefing tapes given to you by Ocelot, the player is made aware that Venom's wounds may cause him to experience hallucinations.
Now, the shrapnel in your skull is pressing on your optic nerve. I'm told any hard impact could have an effect on your visual cortex.
Yeah, the doctor mentioned that.
Your brain might process visual information incorrectly. In other words, you could have hallucinations. You might see things that aren't there, and not see things as they really are. You experience any of that?
So, it isn't impossible to believe that Ishmael may have been a Tyler Durden-style hallucination, especially given how much of a movie buff Kojima was. And finally, the two names used here are important as well, Ishmael and Ahab. They are the protagonists of the novel Moby Dick, and relate directly to both the initial marketing of the game, and of course, the main theme of Metal Gear Solid V, Venom, and Big Boss. That of course being revenge. As first we have Ishmael, who is the initial protagonist of Moby Dick, but just functions more as a first-person narrator for most of the story, and eventually passes the protagonist role onto Captain Ahab, and this is reflected in Big Boss's role in Metal Gear Solid V quite well, as he was the protagonist of Ground Zeroes, a game released as a prequel to V, and eventually passes the role of protagonist on to a person he literally calls Ahab, which, speaking of, Venom clearly references a lot of Captain Ahab in his character, with Ahab being a once promising sailor turned bitter whaler after a previous encounter with the titular Moby Dick, who left his face scarred, his mood soured, and of course, ripped off his leg. Venom experienced a similar situation, with his scarring and missing limb coming from being ambushed by his own pale whale in the form of Skullface, the shadow of Big Boss and leader of the XOF unit. These injuries are also the major inspiration for both of these Ahabs to pursue the path of revenge and hunt their white whale, abandoning their former lives. In the case of Venom, he literally sacrifices his identity as a person to become a godly figure like Big Boss, while Ahab sacrifices his past life and key traits of his person, like his face razor and smoking pipe, to sharpen himself into a true whale slayer. The whales of the story also match thematically quite well, with the titular Moby Dick being personified by Captain Ahab as the ultimate embodiment of evil, when in reality the creature is merely a representation of the ferocity and unpredictability of nature itself, whereas Skullface, and by proxy Cypher, is used in a similar fashion in the Phantom Pain. built up as this ultimate evil force in the world that Venom and Diamond Dogs must stop. And they even represent the unpredictability of nature by making Skullface's ultimate weapon, the one that will surpass Metal Gear, a biological one. As well, the way Venom and Ahab lead their crew is similar in nature. With Venom, he is a terrifying but charismatic figure who leads his men in a dictatorial fashion, with later segments of the game even having 1984-style Big Boss is watching you posters all throughout the base. But yet, he still speaks to his crew as if he's never above anyone who serves under him. He considers Diamond Dog to be his family, and it's shown best during the Low Morale Fight Club event, where Venom equates stabbing any of his fellow soldiers to stabbing him personally.
We don't draw weapons on comrades. Look around you. This is your family.
And forcing them to go through with it so that they would never turn weapons on their allies again. This cult of personality inspired those amongst Diamond Dogs to look towards Venom with respect, the same way the crew of the Pequod revered Ahab, one of the leads even considering Ahab to be an ungodly godlike man, though unlike Ahab, whose endless pursuit of Moby Dick eventually led to his own demise at the hands of the whale, Venom gets his, with the final clash with Skullface representing perfectly his connection to Ahab. As with every shot fired into Skullface, Venom's entire character briefly flashes back to his hospital appearance, when he was literally Ahab. Now, while Skullface and Venom's rivalry is rather humorous, but ironic if you look at it from a grander perspective, I think it's great, as they were both shaped into the man they are now by Big Boss and his legend. They are the Shadow and the Phantom, a man who was given the purpose of perfecting a legend, while the other is a figure who selflessly spreads it. As well, Skullface is one of the few people in the whole world of Metal Gear who is completely unaffected by Big Boss's legend, as he knows when and where Boss failed on his missions, even openly mocking Big Boss to his allies.
Give my regards to your boss when you get home.
In a way, the same way you can view Venom Snake as a representation of the player, Skullface represents every failure only the player knows, like an embarrassing death or funny thing you did while playing Metal Gear. While Venom is a literal, physical representation of the legend and its power. These two make for a perfect conflict, as, while it is very funny to think about the fact that Skullface prepared for 9 years to give a long speech to the wrong guy, the man he gave it to has more in common with him than he could have possibly imagined, as they are both men who, no matter what they did, no matter how talented they became, were doomed by their role in life, and will be forgotten by the history books. Though with the shadow that Diamond Dog hunted with a vengeful fury gone, all that remained was the phantom pain of his actions, cultivating an uneasy paranoia that would spread and eat Diamond Dogs alive from within.
Doesn't feel like this is over. And I'll never be whole again.
As, over the course of the game, Venom encounters quite a few characters who his actions impact in significant ways which demonstrate how impossible the prospect of a peaceful life was for him, thanks to Big Boss. Firstly, you have Eli, the leader of the Lord of the Flies unit, and of course, the genetic clone of the original Big Boss. Their relationship through the game is partially a one-sided rivalry, with Eli hating Venom not only because he believed him to be his father, but also because he saw Venom as actively looking down on him as a failure, when in reality, what Venom simply wanted was to give this kid a better, more peaceful life outside of war. This miscommunication of course led to multiple rebellions aboard Mother Base, a handful of dead children, and of course, climaxing in Eli hijacking the restored Metal Gear Sahelanthropus and leaving Diamond Dogs. Though, in their final moments together, explicitly after Venom has regained his memories, likely understanding who Eli is, he comes to realize that he can't bring Eli the peace he wants to. So instead, he gave the boy something to fight for.
That's right. Don't blame yourself. Blame me.
Then you have the silent sniper Quiet, the woman who originally tried to kill Venom in the hospital at the beginning of the game, and was severely burned by Big Boss, to such a degree that her internal damage was irreversible, and she was only saved by Skullface testing a mutant strand of the vocal cord parasite on her. She was also infected at this time with the English strand of the parasite, in hopes that if she were captured, Quiet could speak English and cause a massive pandemic aboard Mother Base and begin Skullface's grand plan of erasing man's most common tongue. Though, thanks to the actions of Diamond Dogs, and more specifically Venom, Quiet grew fiercely loyal to the PMC, even seemingly falling in love with Venom himself. She would break free of containment regularly and tried to stop or give warning about vocal cord parasite outbreaks by those who were infected. As well, she was willing to jump into an area flooded with chlorine gas even though she breathed through her skin to retrieve anyone trapped below. Though it is after the second outbreak of the vocal cord parasite, which was brought about by a mutation, that caused Quiet to flee Mother Base in order to protect her comrades, and more specifically, Venom. As if the English strand were to mutate, it would mean certain doom for the world. Though Venom tracked down her location in hopes of bringing her home, accepting her for who she was, but as if to punish him for not being able to let go. During the rescue, he is bitten by a cobra and incapacitated. In his dying state, he watches as Quiet is forced to break her silence to save him, essentially sacrificing herself in the process and leaving your party for good. Though this second outbreak of the vocal cord parasite that sent Quiet away was also one of the most devastating moments for Venom in his career. This being the event known as Mission 43, Shining Light Even in Death. After an unknown element causes a mass viral infection on the quarantine platform to begin, Venom volunteers to enter the area and suss out the issue. Inside he finds his men, dying painful deaths from the vocal cord parasites that he thought he stopped with the Wolbachia bacteria infection. And after the parasite threatens to spread globally, Venom is forced to gun down every single infected individual inside the building, killing his own men in a heartbreaking series of events. Legitimately, this is one of the best segments of gameplay in Metal Gear as a whole. Not only does the game show you the name of the person that you are killing, which will be a member of your actual staff, someone you might actually recognize, it also implies that Venom recognizes them as well. The game does a great part at making you feel awful the entire way through as well, with most of the members of the dying army reacting in different ways, some begging for their lives, others trying to fight back, and of course, those who graciously accept their death, saluting the boss, and even humming the Peace Walker main theme. Though, in a moment which seems like a tiny ray of hope in a sea of death, Venom notices an uninfected soldier. He immediately picks him up to carry him to safety. If he could just save one man from this all, it could be worth it. Though seconds before they escape, the soldier chimes in that he didn't make it either. Venom lies him on the floor as he begs for the same death his comrades in arms experienced, and his commanding officer complies. This whole mission shows that no matter how powerful Venom would become, his legend couldn't save a single man from their fate. Now, Shining Light Even in Death is a great moment both gameplay-wise, but also one that forced Venom to confront his major ideology when running Diamond Dogs. This being to never turn your weapon on an ally. This is so ingrained in the base that not only does killing a member of Diamond Dogs cause you an instant game over, that in the mission itself, the one non-infected soldier repeats this back to you as the reason he couldn't shoot his own comrades.
The ship was firing when we entered, but I couldn't bring myself to shoot back. Like you said, boss, never point a weapon at one of your own.
This man is also the same soldier that Venom failed to save near the end of the mission. A strong representation of his ideology dying as well. and this grief takes its physical form in Venom's hallucination. Imagining the shrapnel-like horn in his head elongating into a demon's horn, he wanders the hall of scattered corpses before finally collapsing. Soon after, the bodies of the infected dead were burned in mass, their ashes gathered for a burial at sea ceremony, though before their bodies could be scattered to the ocean, Venom stops them.
I won't scatter your sorrow to the heartless sea. I will always be with you. Plant your roots in me. You're all diamonds.
We're not burying them at sea. What then?
We'll make diamonds from their ashes. Take them into battle with us.
A shining light to our brothers in arms, even in death.
We are diamond dogs.
This moment, while beautiful, also demonstrates one of Venom's greatest flaws, one which can be seen through his many relationships in this game: his lack of an ability to let go. Every time someone has tried to pull away from him or leave, Venom's action of trying to pull them in closer results in their doom, and nothing demonstrates this aspect of his character more than his relationship with Paz Ortega Andrade, as during your playthrough of Phantom Pain, you will quickly find a side quest involving rescuing a surviving member of the original MSF disaster, and after doing so, while investigating the medical platform of Mother Base, you can find a freshly constructed room, assumedly for these soldiers. Though inside, you instead find Paz, seemingly in better health and with a little V-shaped scar where the bomb was. Yet, before her or Venom can truly speak to each other, Ocelot and Miller interrupt, explaining that they were able to rescue her after she fell into the ocean that night. They also explain that she has suffered from some type of amnesia, causing her to forget everything about her life leading up to her betrayal of Big Boss and MSF. Ocelot describes this as a type of dissociative identity disorder. Paz no longer believes she is Pacifica Ocean, or understands what time or day it is, though they are hoping that Venom visiting her and speaking with her about the past can help jog her memories and cure this illness. From here, throughout the game, Venom can visit Paz anytime he finds another former MSF member, each time bringing her a photo from times long ago. Moments of peace back on MSF. Each time it also causes Paz a moment of excitement and joy, followed by confusion, where she finds flaws in her own understanding of time and events. Though the more she realizes the problems with her world, the more she begins to break down. Soon the effects of her psyche cause her stomach wound to begin bleeding over again. Until finally, when Venom returns with the final photo, Paz is standing in the middle of the room, digging into her own scar, begging Venom to stay away from her, before gruesomely producing a similar-looking bomb once thought long removed. And as she falls backwards in a similar manner to her descent from the helicopter 9 years ago, Venom's delusion blows apart, forcing him into reality. 9 years ago, aboard that helicopter, they didn't check for a second bomb. Paz died in an explosion that rocked the helicopter, carrying all her comrades, and more specifically, physically scarring Venom. But given that Venom was the surgeon who missed that detail, the one who didn't find the bomb that day, he wanted so badly for a timeline where he did, one where he saved the last fragment of his former peaceful life, so his mind fabricated one. A disassociative episode, one which was foreshadowed by Ocelot in the illusion itself.
You could have hallucinations. You might see things that aren't there, or not see things as they really are.
Likely brought on by viewing the picture gifted to him by the former MSF soldier that he rescued. One which featured prominently Paz and Miller in their prime, both fully alive and with names that mean peace. Paz in this state was the idea of peace within arm's reach that Venom needed in his life to stay sane. She was quite literally an angel of peace that dragged his damned soul out of hell. This is likely why throughout Mother Base you can find many posters of a cutesy version of Paz dressed like an anime idol, claiming to be the Idol of Peace, a term very similar to Paz's own Child and Angel of Peace identity back at Peace Walker. As well, her being an idol references the performance of her own boss theme, Love Deterrence. She has been propagandized by Venom Snake to be his symbol of peace, and the cassettes you receive from doing her side event speak of the ever-approaching Peace Day. It is always sadly 3 days away. This is because the peace which Paz represents is impossible for Venom to grasp, and the scene of Paz's truth revealed is one of the most beautifully done moments in Metal Gear Solid V, with one of my favorite tracks in the whole soundtrack, that being this haunting piano piece called Beautiful Mirage, A Vision Fades, by Ludwig Forssell, that in part reminds me of Silent Hill 2's own Promise Reprise, which might be intentional as Kojima was working in part on a Silent Hill project during the production of Metal Gear Solid V, and even left some of his own Easter eggs for that game in V itself. It is also especially fitting that a song like that would be used for this part of the game, one that is meant to represent a sort of psychological horror moment not uncommon to both series. It is also thanks to this music that this scene never fails to give me chills. There's just so much said in this moment, with so little dialogue. As we see the butterfly found on Paz's final photo, sitting atop a peace sign, this specific breed of butterfly also is a common symbol of life, death, and rebirth, clearly meant to be a final fragment of Paz's soul, and it flies right past Venom. And much like how he tried to bring her back with his memories, Venom reaches out his hand to grasp the butterfly. But it, like Paz, vanishes, fading through him like a phantom. This scene is also a nice callback to Metal Gear Solid 3, when Snake forms the C3 into a butterfly, to show that even when Venom is trying to be himself, he is still only copying Big Boss, as while he didn't kill Paz, or ruin his own future, in becoming this Big Boss, Venom lost the ability to have a future. He cannot grasp a butterfly of peace, freedom, or rebirth. This is why, to me, he grips onto things so tightly, as once they're gone, he can't create anything new. Venom is a copy, a man with no identity. The game makes it apparent to remind us that he has no genes to pass on. The Wallachia bacteria makes it so he is infertile. As well, all of his memes are ones he inherited already. There will never be another Venom Snake. He is more of a clone of Big Boss than Solid, Liquid, or Solidus will ever be. A figure who will be forever truly alone in the world. Anything new he tries to create will simply crumble away like the illusion of pause. Be it Quiet, Eli, or even Diamond Dogs. Everything Venom creates disappears and dissolves, leaving behind a man who sold his world, living each day in a war without end. Venom's role as Big Boss's body double is one of the best foreshadowed reveals throughout the entirety of Phantom Pain. From small things like the medic in Ground Zero being voiced by Kiefer Sutherland pitched down, to Venom specifically smoking electric cigars, which Boss explicitly hated, to of course, the man who sold the world being the first thing the player hears upon starting the game, which for those musically inclined knows it's a song about a double identity. Even the soldiers of Mother Base tend to make comments about the strangeness of the situation, and most of the people who should recognize you as Boss don't see it right away when they meet Venom. Though, as I explained earlier, this was done for more than just the reasons of explaining a plot hole in an MSX game. Metal Gear Solid V is a way of demonstrating just how much of a monster Big Boss has become. As where Venom's role is a beautiful one for the player, his character and its story is a tragedy, not a triumph. He is someone who was a fiercely loyal soldier of MSF and had his identity taken from him, his mind manipulated, his body used, and he was ultimately disposed of when a rookie that neither him nor his leader expected to succeed. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's the same story as the former World's Greatest Soldier, the leader of the Cobra unit, the Boss. An extremely talented and patriotic woman who over her decorated career had all of her accomplishments stolen and gifted to others who were perceived as more worthy. She was treated like trash by her government and eventually sentenced to die thanks to a screw-up on their part. Yet she, much like Venom, always accepted her orders. And worst of all, the people sent to kill them are essentially their sons. In the case of Venom, it was Solid Snake, and for the Boss, it was Naked Snake. And when Naked Snake learned about what his government did to a person so close to him, he had planned to carry out her will as he saw it, turn the world into a home for soldiers, a world without borders, one where the tides of battle could not force you to fight your friend. This is why he formed MSF, though over the years, Big Boss's heart darkened. Every betrayal stabbed him deeper and deeper until he met the Boss's AI mammal pod, who laid down their arms while operating Peace Walker. This action essentially broke his mind. He swore off her teachings and pursued his own world, one where soldiers would always be needed, a cycle of constant conflict, a outer heaven where men unaccepted by their state, leadership, or world could find a purpose. Though to fully achieve this dream, he would need someone strictly loyal to him that would follow his commands without question. He needed Venom Snake, which he then proceeded to use in a similar manner that the United States government did his mentor. Venom's usage in the series helps paint Big Boss as the true villain he's supposed to be, one that we also helped create and are on equal terms with. So essentially, Venom is not just the Phantom of Big Boss, but a reimagining of the Boss. We, the player, in engaging with and improving Venom's skills, finally feel what it's like to be in the shoes of that legendary soldier, the person who started everything, while literally being the character who, in the reality of the games, did start everything. We are the final boss of Metal Gear. We are the boss. And the history between 1984 and 1995 is for us to decide. Questions like what happened to Sahelanthropus? Well, given that it was taken in by Diamond Dogs in pieces, it could be used for a number of different things. Could it have been retooled to Metal Gear TX55? That's for you to decide. Did Venom ever reunite with Quiet? Well, nothing states it directly, but there is precedent to assume that he tried. As, after the final mission, when she leaves your party, if you replay her boss fight over and over and over again, at least 7 times, you can re-unlock Quiet as a buddy. A beautifully done secret, mind you, that feels like a final desperate attempt to get her back, maybe is truly a representation of them reuniting in the future. Hell, maybe the big boss who adopted Sniper Wolf was actually Venom, as her birth year tends to line up when Venom was active, and the characters in Metal Gear 2 imply that Big Boss had a tendency to adopt war orphans like Sniper Wolf out of battlefields, an action we literally see Venom do in Phantom Pain. Many pieces of the series' lore is left for the player to decide upon, as thanks for them following the series for 25 long years. And that freedom is what has created many different amazing interpretations of the word, like Cody Shaw's own Last Day of Outer Heaven, a short but sweet comic depicting Venom's final moments in Outer Heaven after being defeated by Snake, which was then turned into an animation by Citizen5 on YouTube using audio from a reading of that same comic. I sincerely recommend you check out all 3 individual pieces, and while I'm recommending things, check out Chip Cheesum's Let's Play of Metal Gear Solid V, which took the many different interpretations of Venom's character and created one of the most entertaining and impressive Let's Play series I've ever seen.
Of course, they have to apply. And of course, because we got Dee Dee with us, he immediately found that bear. But if we're gonna fight the bear, we need bear fighting music!
Rewatching it is always a treat, especially if you're a longtime fan of his. Ultimately, to me, Venom Snake is a character and concept I believe was executed with utter perfection. He is one of, if not my favorite character in the Metal Gear series as a whole, right next to Solid Snake. And as the final playable protagonist in the Kojima era of Metal Gear, I feel his story about putting the series and its history into the hands of the players is a final goodbye any media could ask for. So here's to you, Big Boss. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/MediNotTheBadGuy. This video was an undertaking. I wanted to cover everything I possibly could about Venom and try to get all my ideas out there. So there are some segments that are a little bit longer than others because I really wanted to capture why Venom and Metal Gear Solid V means so much to me. And if anything about this interested you, please give Metal Gear Solid V a try. In fact, give the whole series a try. They're all fantastic games, and some of my absolute favorites.